PlayStation. Before 1994, most video games lived on cartridges. Fast but limited. Storage was tight, and so was ambition. When Sony entered the console market for the first time, it made a decision that would reshape the industry. It built the PlayStation around CDs instead. That single choice gave developers far more room to work with, more space for bigger worlds, longer stories, and levels of detail cartridges simply couldn't hold. The result was a new kind of game, one that leaned into cinematic storytelling in ways players hadn't seen before. Final Fantasy VII turned that ambition into an era-defining epic. Metal Gear Solid brought stealth and tension into a cinematic space. Resident Evil made horror feel slow and physical. Gran Turismo turned racing into simulation. By the end of its life, the PlayStation had sold more than 100 million units worldwide. And Sony, with no real console history behind it, had become one of gaming's biggest forces almost overnight. PlayStation 2. Launched in 2000, the PlayStation 2 became the best-selling console in history. And it wasn't particularly close. Part of that came down to versatility. It doubled as one of the cheapest DVD players on the market, which put it in living rooms that had never owned a console before. The games followed at the same scale, nearly 4,000 titles across its lifetime, including Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, God of War, Shadow of the Colossus, and Kingdom Hearts, games that shaped what an entire generation expected from the medium. Its audience was so large that developers kept releasing PS2 titles for years after the PlayStation 3 had already launched. That kind of scale doesn't happen often. PlayStation Portable, Sony's first handheld, arrived in 2004, and it looked like nothing else on the market. The screen was sharp and wide, the graphics closer to a home console than any portable device had managed before, and it did more than play games. It handled movies, music, and even basic web browsing, all from something that fit in one hand. In Japan, it found a defining game in Monster Hunter, which turned the PSP into a social device as much as a personal one, carried into cafes and living rooms wherever people could connect and play together. Elsewhere, Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII, and God of War, Chains of Olympus proved something else, that a handheld game didn't have to feel like a smaller version of a console experience. That combination made the PSP one of the best-selling handhelds ever made. PlayStation 3. The PlayStation 3 launched in 2006, carrying one of the toughest starts in Sony's history. Its cell processor was a genuine leap in power, but that power came at a cost. It was notoriously difficult for developers to work with, and the console's high price tag slowed early adoption. For a while, it looked like the PS3 might struggle to find its footing. Then it did. Uncharted turned cinematic action-adventure into a signature PlayStation genre. The Last of Us redefined how much a story-driven game could carry emotionally. Little Big Planet opened the door to user-created content at scale. Demon's Souls quietly started a genre of its own. By the back half of its life, the PS3 wasn't just competitive, it was essential. It also played a key role off the screen, helping establish Blu-ray as the winning format for high-definition movies. PlayStation Vita. The PlayStation Vita arrived in 2011 with hardware that, on paper, had no real competition. Dual analog sticks, a responsive touchscreen, and graphics well beyond what other handhelds could manage at the time. It should have been a clear success. Instead, limited first-party support kept it from reaching a wide audience, and it never became the mainstream hit. Its specs suggested it could be, but it found something else: a smaller, more devoted following, built around a strong indie library, a deep catalog of Japanese titles, and remote play, which let PS4 owners stream their games straight to the handheld. It's a quieter legacy than Sony probably hoped for. Even so, the Vita comes up again and again as one of gaming's most underrated consoles. PlayStation 4. The PlayStation 4 launched in 2013 with a simple goal: make the console easier to build for. It worked. The developer-friendly architecture translated directly into output, a steady run of critically acclaimed exclusives across the console's lifespan: Bloodborne, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Marvel's Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima. Each one helped define the generation on its own terms. Combined with strong third-party support, that lineup made the PS4 one of the fastest-selling consoles Sony has ever released. No rocky start to recover from here. PlayStation 5. Released in 2020, the PlayStation 5 changed one of gaming's most basic constants: the loading screen. Its SSD is fast enough to nearly eliminate them, which does more than save time. It changes what a game is allowed to be, opening up designs that simply weren't practical on older hardware. The DualSense controller pushed that same idea into the player's hands, using adaptive triggers and detailed haptic feedback to make in-game actions physically felt rather than just seen. Paired with ray tracing and serious hardware power, the PS5's library, Astrobot, Ratchet & Clank, Rift Apart, Demon's Souls has leaned into all of it. More than a quarter century after the original console changed what CDs could do for games, the PS5 is still asking the same underlying question: what becomes possible next?